which is what we're going to do as I head to Brussels tomorrow for more coverage at the end of the week. And that's Crestmead's Business for tonight. I'm Richard Crest in Dubai. Whatever you're up to in the hours ahead, I hope it. Oh, I don't know. I'll see you in Brussels on Thursday.
Once upon a time, the Russians claimed they would not invade Ukraine, so why would anyone believe what they have to say this time? The lead starts right now. The White House adding skepticism to Russia's so-called strategy shift, claiming its forces will retreat from Ukraine's capital city of Kiev. Ahead, a member of Ukraine's parliament who is helping push back Putin's army as a member of the Ukrainian resistance. Plus, as refugees flee Ukraine, medical foot soldiers move in, offering their expertise in hard-hit areas of Russia's invasion. Also, the January 6th Investigation Committee wraps up its investigation, zeroing in on a very suspicious 7-hour gap in Trump call logs as rioters stormed the Capitol.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We're going to start with breaking news on our world lead. President Biden and his top administration officials making it quite clear today that they will not believe Russia's newest claims of de-escalation until they see it happening on the ground in Ukraine for themselves.
We'll see. I don't read anything into it until I see what their actions are.
There is what Russia says, and there's what Russia does. We're focused on the latter. And what Russia is doing is the continued brutalization of Ukraine.
We're not prepared to call this a retreat or even a withdrawal. We think that what they probably have in mind is a repositioning to prioritize elsewhere.
Earlier today, after another round of negotiations with Ukraine, Russian officials claimed they plan to, quote, drastically reduce their military assault on the capital of Kiev and the northeastern city of Chernihiv. Sources telling CNN that the U.S. is seeing some signs of a shift in Russia's strategy, including a withdrawal of some Russian troops from around Kiev. But U.S. officials believe this is just a repositioning of troops, not a withdrawal. And this apparent change in strategy does not mean that the Russian assault on other parts of Ukraine has let up in any way. Video shows the moment a Russian strike hit a government building in the southwestern town of Mykolaiv today. Local media report at least 12 Ukrainians were killed in that attack. Let's get straight to CNN's chief international anchor, Christiane Amanpour, who's live for us in Kiev, Ukraine. And Christiane, there are so many reasons for the world to be skeptical about what Putin's true intentions are at this point.
Jake, that's absolutely right. And I think the best one can say right now is that whatever's come out of the Kremlin, the U.S. is right and the Ukrainians are right. Don't believe it until you actually see it. And so far, there is no evidence of any kind of major scale retreat. And to be fair, the Russians haven't said that. They've actually said that they're going to, maybe back off a little bit in terms of the big cities like Kiev, because why? They have not been able to take it, and reposition and redirect their forces to where they actually are pretty well manned up, which is in the eastern part of the country, which they already occupy, or at least part of it, and they actually do want to consolidate that and expand that piece of territory along within the south. So the best you can really hope for right now is a shift, or at least the best Kiev can hope for is a shift. I was out today with one of the key lawmakers, a parliamentarian. She's an opposition parliamentarian, but right now everybody is with Zelensky and the government and with the country. And she told me that on no account will this city fall, or will they let it fall. Day 34 of war, and the sounds are all around.
There we go. Yeah. That sort of disturbs your day all the time, but you learn to live with it.
Ukrainian MP Lesia Vasilenko says that after a month of this, she, like her president and countryfolk, believe the Russians will never take this city, though fighting does continue in the suburbs. She wanted to meet here at Maidan Square, where Ukrainians stood up for their rights in 2014 and brought down Putin's wrath and his revenge. Given his battlefield setbacks, though, I asked whether his shifting demands make a diplomatic compromise easier for Ukraine to accept. Now there's word, we don't know whether it's going to bear fruit, but that they might allow Ukraine to join EU as long as you renounce the NATO. Is that a compromise that Ukraine would accept?
All of this started 34 days ago because one country cannot declare itself more sovereign than another country. And Russia tried to do just that. We cannot go for that compromise because that compromise to Putin would also mean a compromise of the general framework of defense and security of the world. Giving in to dictators means incentivizing them.
Ukraine's dramatic resistance surprised the whole world, including Vladimir Putin.
3 days they gave us, right? Putin thought he would be here in a matter of hours. We are doing this for our very survival, and when the survival instinct kicks in, people can do amazing things. People become superheroes, and this is what you're witnessing in Ukraine.
Lesia is armed with her guns. The AK-47 is at home today, but she shows me her pistol, held close to her heart. Lesia, when we spoke in the first week of the war before I got here, you said, I've got my machine gun, and you've tweeted that I've also got my manicures.
Yes.
Your resistance takes many, many forms. And you're actually carrying your pistol right now.
I am. I do have my PM with me, and I carry it actually with me all the time. Like
And did you ever imagine in your life that as an MP in 2022 in Ukraine, you'd be forced to carry a gun around?
No, never, never. I'm actually very much anti-gun, and this gun caused a lot of problems for me because in order to recharge it, you have to sort of like do this thing, and with the nails, I had very nice, beautiful, long nails. It was impossible to do so. They had to all come off.
And just so people are clear, the idea of beauty, self-maintenance, is also resistance.
Yes, all jokes aside, it's an important element for all women who are fighting alongside the manfolk here. The women still want to be beautiful. They still want to have dignity as women.
And to be human.
And to be human.
He basically said, Putin, that Ukraine doesn't exist as a nation. You don't exist as a people.
And we say to him, life goes on, we carry on living. Your war, you're fighting against us is in the background now. And we'll go on fighting it for as long as we have to, but we will go on living at the same time.
She is still an MP. Parliament is still passing laws. And since an army marches on its stomach, this too is their fight, their war effort. And so the ordinary becomes extraordinary, peeling carrots as if they were stacking up bullets. This trendy brunch and bar has turned into a wartime canteen, chopping onions in a frenzy of efficiency and purpose. Do you feel you're going to win?
Of course, we must destroy the Russian army.
You said you must destroy the Russian army?
Yes.
Yeah. And so they help turn out 600 meals a day and counting for the army and territorial defense, for hospitals and shelters. Outside, Lesia shows me the pictures of her 3 young children who she's had to send away for their safety.
This is my baby from this morning.
Wow.
This
And
is my
she's
youngest.
How old?
She's going to be 10 months in just a couple of days. On the
That must be painful to be without her.
It is, and she's sort of looking at you like, really, Mommy? Really? You're going to be away from me?
Staying on the front lines with this struggle comes at a huge personal cost, but Lesia has no doubts.
I am where I have to be. I mean, things happen for a reason. I'm a firm believer in that. There's a reason why I was elected in 2019. We have a task, we have a duty, and we will complete it, and then we will see where life takes us.
So, Jake, just as we've been speaking, the air raid sirens here in Kiev have been going off again. So it is clear that, activity is still, heavy around this area. She, Lesia Vasilenko, the MP, is going to France in order to try to keep mobilizing international support. They still need as much support as possible. They need weapons because clearly they're using them all day and every day to stave off the Russians, and they need them replenished, and they need it done fast.
All right, CNN's Christiana Amanpour in Kiev, Ukraine. Thank you so much. Today, President Biden spoke with key European allies before hosting the Prime Minister of Singapore at the White House, where they discussed their support for Ukraine in ways to try to better deter further Russian aggression. President Biden also addressed whether or not he believes the Kremlin is serious about this idea they will de-escalate around Kiev and another northeastern Ukrainian city. CNN's MJ Lee is live for us at the White House right now. And MJ, President Biden and his top officials, they're really pushing back on this idea that Russia is scaling back in any way its overall offensive on Ukraine.
That's right, Jake. Even as Russia says that it is going to drastically reduce some of its military attacks in some cities in Ukraine, including the capital city of Kiev, and Ukrainian officials are saying they are beginning to see some withdrawal of Russian troops. The U.S. is making it very clear this afternoon that there is reason to be cautious and even very skeptical. When President Biden was asked about all of these developments earlier this afternoon, he said it is simply too early to tell. Listen.
I don't read anything into it until I see what their actions are. We'll see if they follow through on what they're suggesting. In the meantime, we're going to continue to keep strong the sanctions. We're going to continue to provide the Ukrainian military with their capacity to defend themselves. And we're going to continue to keep a close eye on what's going on.
And since Biden made those comments, Pentagon and White House officials have further elaborated to say that any Russian military movement is currently being seen by the U.S. as a redeployment, not a withdrawal, and that the threat to Kyiv remains very real, and there could even be the possibility of a new major offensive coming from Russia in the coming days. The White House just said, quote, "We are not going to take their word for it. We are going to wait to see what their actions look like." Now, all of this coming as President Biden had a jam-packed day meeting with the Prime Minister of Singapore, where Ukraine was, of course, a major topic. And earlier today, he had a call with European leaders, including the leaders of Germany, France, Italy, and the UK. I should note quickly on that call, the White House comms director, Kate Bedingfield, just said that the comments that President Biden made over the weekend, that Vladimir Putin cannot remain in power, that those comments did not come up in that call with European officials. Jake.
All right. MJ Lee at the White House, thank you so much. Russia may claim to be reducing its footprint near Kyiv, but that's not the case in other parts of Ukraine, of course. The new video evidence of Russia's activity beyond the capital. Plus, breaking news out of Israel, a deadly shooting near Tel Aviv as fears grow about a possible resurgence in Israel of the terrorist group ISIS. Stay with us.
The journey to the top for a successful business in Africa starts with an idea. But how does a concept become a moneymaker? Africa and global industry leaders share their stories this weekend on Profit Point in CNN Marketplace Africa in association with Dangote.
With Bitcoin, not only do we have the best monetary asset in human history, we have the best monetary network in human history. Bitcoin solved a lot of the monetary functions that we know as very expensive with cryptography and with math. And so I can escrow a bearer instrument in Bitcoin. It's worth the same amount in Chicago as it is in London, as it is in Nigeria, as it is in Argentina, and I can zip it around the world instantly and for free. What we can do is take your dollars and escrow them around the world over the Bitcoin network. So think about this. What if I wanted to send money from Chicago to London? What we can do is take dollars out of your bank account, turn it into Bitcoin, zip that value to London instantly and for free. You blink, you'd miss it. It goes so fast and it costs nothing. And then we turn it back into British pounds. That's the innovation, and that's how we use Bitcoin, the monetary network.
We live in such a fast-paced world where the news has been so relentless. Historic events have happened one after the other. I think that you need that daily appointment with viewers around the world to try and sort through the news of the day. What's important? Why does it matter to me? How do I put it all in context? We follow the news as it happens and where it happens. And then we also take a step back to walk the viewer through the day's news. That is the mission of Hala Garani tonight.
We all have cravings, and with spending more time at home, those cravings can hit big when you want a snack. So here are some healthy ways to indulge. When you have a sweet tooth, snack on berries and yogurt, or whip up a smoothie. This one has sweet potato, cauliflower rice, and almond butter. It's packed with protein, fiber, and healthy fats that will help you feel full longer. Add spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, or vanilla instead of sugar. Craving something crunchy? Replace potato chips with avocado on crunchy toast or whole grain crackers. It's great as a spread or sliced with seasoning. Or try some crispy bell peppers or roasted Brussels sprouts. Now, Brussels sprouts are high in fiber, vitamin K, and C. And when you want a salty snack, make it spicy instead.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 70,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore cnn.com/impact. Click to take action.
Continuing with our world lead, we turn our focus now to southern Ukraine, where Russian forces continue their brutal and relentless attacks on the Ukrainian people. The regional governor in Mykolaiv reports that his office was hit in a deadly strike this morning, where half the building was destroyed. Surveillance video shows the incoming missile, which is highlighted here. The building shakes and a plume of dust and smoke begin to rise. The 9-story building is still standing, some of it, but as you can see, there's a huge hole in it. At least 12 people were killed, with 33 others wounded in these initial counts. Mykolaiv has been the focus of Russian attacks for days, yet Ukrainians remain there, including the individual who is with those Ukrainians, CNN's Ben Wiedemann. Ben, where were you during this morning's attack, and what have you seen in the aftermath?
Yeah, Jake, actually right now we're hearing an air raid siren. We were in this hotel at 8:45 a.m. local time when we heard a large blast. It was at the headquarters of the regional governor, which is really right in the middle of the city. And it would appear that this was very intentional. This is a regional governor who has been very outspoken, very active during this last month of bloodshed here in Mykolaiv. This is a city that's very close to Russian front lines. They have been pushed back, but as we see with this air raid siren wailing outside right now, as we saw from this strike on the regional governor's office, they still have the ability to lob missiles and bombs into this city. Now, in the area around the governor's office, there are lots of people, lots of residential buildings, many of which all of the windows were shattered. But it was just a few hours later. We were there for quite a while. People were sweeping up the glass, trying to get back to normal life. Many people have fled Mykolaiv, but for the most part, the population is sticking it out. Now, this afternoon, we were outside of the city, and we saw that there was more outgoing Ukrainian fire than incoming Russian fire. And the Ukrainian forces have made significant progress to push the Russians away from this city, but not quite far enough. Jake?
All right, Ben Wiedemann, thank you so much. Joining us now from Lviv in western Ukraine to talk about this attack on Ukraine is Avril Benoit. She's on leave from her executive position with the international aid organization Doctors Without Borders and currently is serving as the group's emergency communications coordinator in Ukraine. First of all, you're not a doctor, but what are your people, who are doctors and nurses and the like, what are they seeing on the ground? What range of wounds are they treating?
It's incredibly impressive. I would say what we're seeing, the Ukrainian health system, Ukrainian surgical teams, surgeons, nurses, they are there in the hospitals that we are able to access. Now, you have to bear in mind that there are a number of places where we cannot access, where they're encircled, or where it's just far too volatile for us to be able to send teams. So you're following Mariupol, Chernihiv, Kherson, and Sumy. But in other places, what we're finding on the ground is a huge appetite to prepare for mass casualty influx of wounded people all at once. Surgeons are interested, really keen to learn from an organization like us that has a lot of experience of war surgery, of triage in situations like this. So we've been doing a lot of training with them and also helping them with supplies, because while the staff are there, they're overworked, but they are on the job. They have indicated to us repeatedly from various parts of the country that they lack medical supplies. So that's one of the things that we're offering.
Let's talk about medical supplies, because I know that's something that the Ukrainian people and Ukrainian medical professionals are in dire need of, things like oxygen, medicine, bandages. How are you getting that equipment in?
It's still possible to bring supplies in through various routes, through Poland, Slovakia. There are ways to, with trucks, to navigate the security environment. Amazingly enough, also the train system seems to be working quite well, and so that's another way that we're able to move shipments to and from. And so it's sometimes far too difficult. I will tell you, there was a convoy of supplies that we were working with other organizations to reach Mariupol, and it was far too dangerous on the road leading to it, littered with landmines that perhaps a car could slalom through, but certainly not a transport truck with significant amounts of cargo. So it's also, of course, a dangerous and volatile environment. So sometimes you reach a place and you just have to hunker down for a while you're assessing, is it possible to go further? What's also happening, I should say, is that if we can bring it to a warehouse, to a central place that's accessible by those hospitals that have requested the supplies, sometimes they are sending cars with their own drivers, sometimes with doctors, to come and pick it up from us. So we're just making do the best we can.
What about medical care for non-combatants? How are civilians with serious health problems, how are they getting treated?
Incredibly difficult, because in a context like this, in a situation of war, often the authorities want to prioritize become
Avril, we're
taking care of them.
Could you,
for the civilians,
Avril, could you give that answer again? Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry. The air alarm is just...
All right, Avril, why don't you go seek safety? We appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
I'll finish the answer and then...
No, go ahead. You go seek shelter.
Okay.
Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Once refugees make it out of Ukraine, another struggle begins, figuring out life so far away from home. How that process is proceeding, that's next.
Egypt is diversifying its energy mix and extending its pioneering strategy to every part of the country. Through working in partnerships, Egypt aims to provide 42% of its electricity from renewable energy by 2035. The country is successfully transitioning to more sustainable sources, creating green jobs, and powering a more sustainable future.
Mainland China tolerates no signs of dissent whatsoever.
Are you anticipating dozens of people being prosecuted? Hundreds? Thousands?
Stories of mass internment camps have been trickling out.
Do you think you'll see your husband again?
This period of mourning is taking place in a real climate of fear. The humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in front of our eyes here.
This is one of the cells? Come on in here.
We're flying over ISIS front lines. This is the only protection we have. Nerves are still very much on edge. Firefighters have been battling this blaze for weeks.
What do you say to people who question climate change?
We need to do something now.
Ivan Watson, CNN.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating,
connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Rebekah in New Delhi, and this is CNN.
In our world lead today, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky warned in an address that Vladimir Putin wants to ensure that after Russia's brutal assault on Ukraine, nothing but, quote, ruins and refugees will remain. The European Union says children make up half of the more than 3.9 million people who have fled Russia's bloody attack on Ukraine. CNN's Kyung La talks to mothers in Poland stuck in something of a refugee purgatory. They're homesick and heartbroken while their husbands and brothers and sons remain in Ukraine to defend the country.
They fled from Russian missiles, now wait for Polish papers, but all they want is to be in Ukraine. We've been waiting for 4 hours, yells this woman out of frustration. I have a special needs child. But every refugee here, almost all of them women and mothers, has needs. The more than 2 million Ukrainian refugees in Poland will have to show documents if they want a Polish national identification number for official services.
You can work.
You want to work?
Yeah.
Yulia Isaeva and her 2 children waited since 3 in the morning. 6 hours later, they got that national number so she can work. I wish I could continue my old life, says Isaeva. There, she had a job, family. Her husband now fights in the war. It was taken away, she says of her life. I have to live here by force. While she's grateful to build a safe life in Poland for her children, I want to go to Ukraine, she says. You hear the story repeated again and again from the women pulled from their lives, stuck in a purgatory of passing time while a war rages at home.
Live here.
This is where you live?
Yes, yes.
This cot is Irina Yeshinovska's life now.
I work in Ukraine. I'm police. Yes.
You're a police officer?
Yes.
She was. She now grabs a neon vest instead. She's a volunteer at a Warsaw refugee center, where she herself arrived in early March, fleeing bombing in Kiev. Most refugees leave here in days for temporary housing or for other countries. But it's been a month, and she refuses to, unless it's to go home to her life in Kiev, where her brothers are on the front lines.
Do you think you'll see them again?
No.
Yes, she says. They talk twice a week at most.
Я думаю, что все будет хорошо.
I think everything will be fine, she says. At least, I hope for it. Not just my brothers, but everyone. But life outside the war doesn't stop, even though Yulia Isayeva wishes it would.
Але якщо треба, то треба. Будемо починати.
If I have to, she says, I'll do it. We'll start.
The extraordinary thing is, in talking to all these women, every single person we've talked to believes that this is temporary, this life in Poland. They see the same news that you're delivering on the program. They are seeing the images. They're having to explain this to their children. Yet when you ask them, they believe that all of this is temporary and they're going to be able to go right back home to Ukraine and pick up life where it stopped. Jake?
Changla in Warsaw, thank you so much. Also breaking in our world lead, another deadly attack in what's become a disturbing series of terrorist incidents in Israel that have left 11 people dead in just 8 days. At least 5 people were killed in the latest attack just today near Tel Aviv. Israeli media reporting there may have been multiple assailants, terrorists on a motorcycle. There's no claim of responsibility yet, but for the first time since 2017, ISIS claims it was behind 2 other deadly attacks on Israelis. One on Sunday that left 2 people dead, and another last Tuesday that killed 4. In the wake of today's attack on innocent Israelis, Israeli police have been placed on their highest alert level. Coming up next, the key questions lawmakers are asking about the January 6th insurrection and a reported 7-hour gap in White House call logs as the Capitol riot unfolded. Stay with us.
Shahira Yahya is the co-founder of Kaitosan Egypt, a biotech startup that creates what they say are fully organic farming products from shrimp shells. Every year, Egypt discards thousands of tons of shrimp waste, an abundant resource that holds the key ingredient for Shahira's products, Kaitosan.
Kaitosan isn't a new concept at all. It's been around since the 1800s. You can find it on land through insects, in the sea in the form of lobsters and shrimps.
Kaitosan Egypt breaks away minerals from shells to extract the kaitosan, then dries and grinds it, turning it into an organic product to be used for farming, replacing man-made synthetic fertilizers that can be harmful to the environment.
Kaitosan fertilizers and pesticides target over 70 pests in 25 strategic crops.
The agriculture sector is Egypt's second largest source of revenue, accounting for more than 11% of the country's economy. Shahira has a mission to not only make the sector more organic, but affordable for farmers.
We empower farmers to grow cleaner agriculture, and we are 20% cheaper than competitors.
A greener product that promises a cleaner and more profitable future for Egypt's farmers.
Business never sleeps. As the sun sets in Seoul and Shanghai, deals are signed in Dubai, and Europe is already in play. New York prepares to make its first move. I'm Julia Chatterley, journalist, global market analyst, and host of CNN's First Move. Join me in the financial capital of the world for market-moving perspective on the news influencing global politics, culture, and finance. I'll speak to newsmakers, risk takers, and the ultimate game changers.
Bold moves, big deals, winning trades. It's all right here. Make CNN your first move.
First Move with Julia Chatterley. weekdays on CNN.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source. In a special ongoing season of the Tug of War podcast, CNN reporters are on the ground in Ukraine, documenting Russia's invasion, the escalating conflict, and what it means for the rest of the world. Tug of War. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Our politics lead now. The January 6th Select House Committee investigating the deadly insurrection is zeroing in on 7 hours and 37 minutes. That's the amount of time missing from President Trump's call logs, according to the Washington Post. CNN first reported that there was a gap in his phone records back in February, and now, as CNN's Paula Reed reports, House committee members are looking to see if the former president was using someone else's phone or perhaps a burner phone to get in touch with allies while the Capitol building was being violently assaulted by his supporters.
A key mystery for the January 6th House Select Committee to now solve. Who was talking to then President Trump during the insurrection, and why is there a gap in the official phone records?
It could be a burner phone, for we all know. There's also the possibility that somebody is deliberately suppressing the release of these materials, and we just don't know.
CNN previously reporting that records turned over to the committee show no calls to or from Trump for several hours as violence unfolded on Capitol Hill. Today, the Washington Post reporting that gap stretched for 7 hours and 37 minutes. Bob Woodward was one of the reporters who broke the story.
He is a telephone addict. And the idea that nothing happened in the afternoon on the phone, January 6th, is unlikely as the sun not rising.
Right. All these revelations adding to the pressure on Attorney General Merrick Garland to pursue investigations or even bring charges against Trump or his allies.
Attorney General Garland, do your job so that we can do ours.
Monday night, members of the January 6th committee venting frustration with the Justice Department, which still has not acted on the House's criminal contempt referral against former Trump White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Now, the full House will vote on the committee's recommendation to refer 2 more top Trump advisors who are refusing to cooperate to the Justice Department for possible prosecution. They are Dan Scavino and Peter Navarro.
The Department of Justice has a duty to act on this referral and others we have sent. Without enforcement of congressional subpoenas, there is no oversight. And without oversight, no accountability, not for the former president or any other president, past, present, or future.
Also on Monday, a federal judge in California writing that Trump, more likely than not, committed a crime when he and conservative attorney John Eastman tried to block Congress from counting votes on January 6th. The 44-page opinion in a case over the committee's subpoena for Eastman's emails reads like a legal memo to Garland, with the judge writing the illegality of the plan was obvious. Trump's spokesman calling the ruling absurd. But committee chairman Benny Thompson praised it, saying,
"This ruling is a clear victory for the rule of law."
When we reached out today to the Justice Department, it referred us back to Garland's speech earlier this year, where he said the department remains committed to holding January 6 perpetrators at any level accountable. Now, later this week, Trump's son-in-law and former senior advisor Jared Kushner will appear voluntarily before the House Select Committee. Today, the White House said it will not assert executive privilege over Kushner's testimony. That's consistent with how they've handled other former White House advisors. Jake?
All right, Paula Reed, thanks so much. Let's discuss all of this with CNN senior legal analyst and former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York during the Obama administration, Preet Bharara. Thank you so much for being here. So back in February, CNN reported about a large gap in Trump's call records on January 6th. Now the Washington Post says the committee's investigating if Trump used back channels, other people's phones, burner phones, if the committee received full logs from that day, and if Trump engaged in a possible cover-up. If they can prove any of those points, what might be the ramifications?
Well, first, it's not a good look for the former president of the United States.
He's clearly hiding something.
Yes, and I think there's some nuance here, but I think it's a fundamental matter. It shows that he and others around him didn't want people to know what they were up to. And it will be part of the report that the 1-6 committee puts forward. It also can be part of the predicate for any criminal case that the Justice Department may bring. We don't know exactly where they are in the process or if there is a process. The Trump folks will argue that, it's been reported and it was the president's practice, the former president's practice, to use other people's phones, to not keep records, and that's a pattern and practice of his over the course of the 4 years. And they will say, well, so there was no particular effort or attempt to cover up this particular few hours of phone logs. That's just the way this guy was. I don't know how far that gets them, because the practice of not maintaining records, and sometimes records are flushed down the toilet, and sometimes they're ripped up, and sometimes they find their way to Mar-a-Lago, basically shows a president of the United States who wanted to conceal lots of things on lots of occasions across a lot of issues. So I don't think that argument that I would expect will be ultimately helpful to them.
And you referred to the Justice Department's criminal investigation in addition to the January 6 committee's investigation. According to the New York Times, federal prosecutors are focusing on how one tweet from December 19th might have become a catalyst for insurrections. Part of Trump's message in that tweet read, as we can see, big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there, will be wild. How much weight could one give this tweet in a criminal case against the president? I mean, that could be interpreted any number of ways.
Look, as prosecutors say, when they sum up in cases and when they open in cases, it's the sum total of evidence. The Republicans who have been defending Donald Trump like to cabin the inquiry to a couple of hours on January 6th. The Justice Department, I think reasonable investigators look at the big picture and they say, on this day he sent this particular tweet. On another day he called an official in Georgia. On another day he said, let's find these votes. On another day he's conspiring with Steve Bannon and other people. So that particular tweet on its own and in a vacuum doesn't say a whole hell of a lot. But in combination with lots and lots of other things, if you see a full timeline and a connecting of all the dots, it becomes part of a meaningful story, I think.
Trump recently sat for an interview where he's asking Putin, a clear adversary of the United States, for help to get damaging information on President Biden and his son, Hunter. Take a listen.
Why did the mayor of Moscow's wife give the Bidens, both of them, $3.5 million for them? That's a lot of money. She gave him $3.5 million. So now I would think Putin would know the answer to that. I think he should release it. I think we should know that answer.
Yeah, just to be clear what President Trump's talking about there's a 2020 Senate report that disclosed that a Russian oligarch and then wife of Moscow's mayor gave $3.5 million a decade ago to a company that Hunter Biden says he had no affiliation with. But more broadly, what do you make of this? Here is Trump asking an adversary of the United States, fully engaged in an attack on an ally right now, Ukraine, to give information to damage the president of the United States and his son. This is exactly what he was impeached but not convicted for.
What I make of it, what I think any reasonable person would make of it, it's a person who acts crazy sometimes, who is trying to deflect attention away from himself, because there's a lot of attention, as you mentioned, the 7 hours and 37 minutes of logs that are missing. The 1-6 committee doing a great job of beginning to prove and make the case that he was involved at a much more significant way than was previously known. You have a judge in the last couple of days who, in a parallel proceeding, made the point that there is evidence that Donald Trump and others conspired to violate criminal law, meaning that certain documents have to be released under the crime fraud exception. This is what he does. The fact that he's doing it now with a country who is at war in Ukraine with an ally, and indiscriminately bombing and killing innocent people and children is, I think, something of a new level.
I remember a Republican senator saying after the first impeachment, where he did something similar like this, except as president, that he had learned his lesson. Yeah. He learned his lesson, yes. He learned the lesson. He can get away with it. He can do this all the time. Preet Bharara, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Coming up next, the recent extraordinary weather event that appears to be a first, not a good first, and has experts taking note. Stay with us.
For too long, we have waited for hours to convert currencies, days to clear checks, and decades to reach our potential. But now, we can access the power of African free trade in an instant with PAPS, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System. Overcome barriers, reduce risks, trade in local currencies, and connect with a single market united across Africa. Be a part of Africa's flourishing free trade today.
The IWC Big Pilot's watch is a modern version of a navigation watch that was made in very, very small numbers during World War II. It was a kind of watch, what's called a Beobachtunguhr, an observation watch, and it was designed for navigation in the cockpit. So the modern Big Pilot's watch was not a reissue, not an identical reissue to the original. It had a new mechanism, but it was sort of an expression of the connection between IWC and its history as a maker of aviation watches. It's a watch that really is all about legibility and precision in the air. As a navigation instrument, there's simply no room for error. And it remains today one of the icons of modern watch design and one of the watches that helped to really kickstart the big watch craze of the early 2000s.
I'm Mindy Kincaid in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
Korean automaker Hyundai Motor Company says the future of transport may go beyond traditional passenger vehicles, and that robots may change the way we move.
As an automotive company, we are thinking about the future vehicle. We can make some strong synergy between automotive engineering and robotics technology.
In 2021, Hyundai acquired Massachusetts-based robotics company Boston Dynamics for $1.1 billion. The company showed off its robots at this year's Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
People are incredibly able to move, to maneuver, to grasp things, to perceive their environment, and robots aren't really in that realm yet, but our long-term goal is to be able to do all that stuff.
I was trafficked at the age of 18. I was a single young mom trying to figure out how to put myself through school. I was lured off of a college campus in Eugene, Oregon, and I was trafficked to Las Vegas mainly for nearly 6 years. My name's Rebekah Bender, and I'm the CEO and founder of the Rebekah Bender Initiative. The way that we mentor survivors of human trafficking is through our initiative called the Elevate Academy. Elevate Academy is really a holistic school that invites survivors to join a cohort of other people just like them. They get a mentor, they get a life coach. We help take them through a number of classes, some of which are really about deeper levels of healing. When I was able to finally escape from my trafficker, I can remember during that time I had been traded and sold between 3 different traffickers. I had 2 men tattoo their names on my back like a piece of cattle. I have been to jail multiple times. Had my face broken in 5 places. I was really hopeless and I didn't know how I was going to get out. Finally, a federal investigation led to my trafficker's arrest, and I went home to a family that was really supportive. But we know in this fight against trafficking that that's not the case for everybody. So not only am I really grateful, but I'm also really determined to help communities learn how to be that family for survivors that are trying to rebuild their lives.
Moments ago, President Biden signed into law a bill that makes lynching a federal hate crime. The Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act is named after the 14-year-old black boy who was brutally murdered by a group of white men for allegedly whistling at a white woman in Mississippi in 1955. At the time, Till's mother, she requested an open casket funeral to show the world what happened to her son, what racism had done to him. President Biden remarking on the significance of today's signing just a few minutes ago.
To the Till family, we remain in awe of your courage to find purpose through your pain, to find purpose through your pain. But the law is not just about the past, it's about the present and our future as well.
The bill passed Congress, this time with overwhelming bipartisan support. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Congress had tried and failed more than 200 times to outlaw lynching on the federal basis. In our Earth Matters series today, a record heat wave in the coldest place on the planet. Scientists were shocked this month when a research station in Antarctica reported a temperature 70 degrees above normal for this time of year. It's the equivalent of what might be a 130-degree day in Washington, D.C. in March. CNN Chief Climate Correspondent Bill Weir joins us now. And Bill, take us through why this temperature reading has scientists so worried.
Well, a lot of it has to do with where it is. The South Pole has been sort of stable. The North has been really the point of so much worry and melting and disappearing ice up there. But this is completely off the charts. They're flabbergasted by these numbers. Take a look at the graphics. Vostok is a Russian weather station in East Antarctica. In 65 years of observation, it's never gotten warmer than minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It got up to 0 there. So they're overshooting these records by 30 degrees and in other parts as well. And the cause of this is an atmospheric river that sort of held moisture in, similar to what happened in British Columbia. You can see the big red blobs on this next map that held that heat dome, which would turn out to be deadly in the northern hemisphere. Well, in the south, this is just unprecedented stuff. It's rewritten what they know about Antarctic climate science as well. And if you look at this next graphic, this saddle shape is the average temperature mean. That little red spike on the left side of the graphic, that's not a typo. That's where the temperature was for a couple of days. So this just sat down there. So it's really a game changer in trying to understand what a warmer planet looks like.
And there's this ice shelf in Antarctica nearly the size of Los Angeles, that disintegrated in mid-March within days of that extraordinary warmth on the continent. What's the significance of that?
Well, this is another one. This is something that hasn't been observed since the satellites went up in generations. About 460 square mile ice shelf. And if you think of Antarctica as this big bowl, and around the lips of the bowl are these shelves that hold the frozen inland ice in. It's sort of like a cork in a bottle. That came loose, and that has never been observed in this part. Thankfully, the ice sort of upstream from there isn't enough to affect sea level rise. But what they're worried about at the South Pole is all this massive ice melting from below as the ocean currents warm as well. And that could have massive implications on coastal cities really everywhere.
We're watching all this happen play out.
It's
not in 5 years, not in 10 years. It's happening right now.
Yep.
All right, Bill Weir, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Coming up, survivors from one of the worst scenes of Russia's invasion, the Mariupol theater bombed despite the word children written in big bold letters outside twice in Russian. Coming up next, hear from one family who escaped alive.
Hello, I'm Bianca Noblo in London. The Global Brief is up next. And we're going to continue CNN's coverage of Russia's war in Ukraine, looking at Moscow's apparent shift in military strategy. Turkey hails Tuesday's Russia and Ukraine talks as the most meaningful progress yet. Of course, the world wants to see reasons for optimism, but the US Secretary of State says that Washington has not seen any signs that Russia is actually serious about these talks. Meanwhile, a Russian negotiator says that the military de-escalation is not a ceasefire. So coming up, we're going to speak to a former Supreme Commander about Moscow's next move. Is this just an attempt to get breathing space to regroup forces, or something else, perhaps a genuine recognition of the fact that it's not possible for Russia to take and control all of Ukraine? Now, we've been cautioned that small numbers of Russian forces are moving away from Kiev. Russia can still inflict, though, massive brutality